Hello, welcome to this week's episode of CXNext Live. This is your host, Ryan Lester. This is a weekly series we do focused on the world of customer experience, helping you out there build better strategies and plans around delivering an improved and superior customer experience. Great to have you join. For those of you joining for the first time, we do this series weekly, and we focus on different areas of customer experience. Please feel free to ask us questions, comments, tag items, and also let us know if there's topics you'd like us to cover in the future. For those of you returning, welcome back. Great to have you here and really excited for our discussion today. Now that we're almost into the month of July, we are now in the month of July, we're really looking at what does the second half of the year look like. And obviously the world's been turned upside down based on COVID-19, and we've kind of fallen into this new normal. I've been working from home. Many of our teams are remote. And really it's about how do we continue to deliver a superior customer experience, but doing it in this new way we work, both as employees and also as consumers, how we engage with brands and how they delight us in this new digital first world. When all this started, we did a couple of predictions that we thought were how things were going to change going forward. So we had 7 different predictions we had put out there focused on things around, contact centers will permanently shift to being remote, that self-service will become the new norm, that adaptability will be very data-driven as things change fast. How do we take a data-driven approach? And even things talking about what's going to happen with CX budgets. So there were a number of different predictions we put out there that we thought were going to be kind of part of this new normal, and we're now looking backwards. So now we've been home for a few months. Things have somewhat plateaued in many parts of the world. They're still rising in other parts of the world, but a lot of this has been something that we haven't been doing for a few weeks, but been doing for a few months. So it's nice to take some time and kind of look in the rearview mirror to say, well, we had some predictions about what we thought the future of work would be, the future of customer experience, and really how are those coming to life? What does the new normal look like? How are we managing customer experience? How are we managing our contact centers? And really getting a frontline perspective. What are we seeing with how the variety of industries from financial services to retail to others, how they're reacting and responding to this, and really what are their plans or what are some of the signals we're seeing in the market on what the second half will look like. So I'm really excited for this week's episode. I have 4 outstanding guests joining me from LogMeIn who are all have different roles. So we'll go around the horn here of who's joining. I have Erica, who heads up our solutions consulting team here in North America. Erica is focused on working closely with our prospective customers and existing customers on how they implement many of our solutions around customer experience. Chris joins from our product marketing organization. So he's focused on some of our key customer pain points, what are some of the key things we should be building into our roadmap to address customer needs. Akhil, who's joining from our product organization. So he's on the front line helping many of our customers address their core customer experience challenges and has seen many of the hurdles our customers have been facing as they've been trying to go digital. And then finally, Courtney, who brings it to similar to Erica, focusing on the EMEA market and some of the nuances or perspective of that market. So I'm really excited inviting these 4 guests on, and we're going to spend the next 20 minutes or so talking through a few of these predictions so you can get a better perspective on what this new normal looks like and how it should impact your CX strategy and some of the key learnings you can get from companies out there who may be further ahead or further behind where you are in your specific journey. So without further ado, excited to invite these 4 folks on and to talk through these 4 different predictions. So in order to talk through these predictions further, I've brought our biggest, brightest minds from across LogMeIn who are out every day chatting with real-world companies who are struggling with the changes we're all seeing in the way we address our contact center, our customer service organization across a wide variety of industries. So I'm really excited for my 4 wonderful guests this week. And we're going to talk through these predictions and get their feeling on, are these predictions on point? Are they really missing the mark? And really what's happening on the front lines once again as companies are now in this new normal. So we're going to start off with Erica Mayshar. Erica, welcome. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Ryan.
And we're going to talk through our first prediction, which is this prediction around contact centers will permanently pivot to the world of remote, in that, everybody had to be working from home. There was social distancing. There were all these kind of core challenges around, how are we going to help our employees be efficient and effective, but working from home? Companies are going to see that as a great benefit, and they're going to say, hey, to heck with call centers, to heck with contact centers. Why are we spending all this money? Everybody rather be working from home. So that's going to be the new normal. So what's your perspective on that? Is that spot on, missed the mark? What are you seeing as you're out there talking to companies today?
Yeah, that's I think it's somewhere in between to answer your question. I think it's still a little bit too early to say that permanently, yes, all contact centers are gonna pivot to being remote. I think those waters are still being tested, and we'll see different companies make some different decisions as we go forward, just like in all industries right now. But I will say that it's definitely the disruption is definitely causing companies to explore technology in different ways, and think about what those tools for efficiency need to look like going forward. And a lot of them are in different parts of that journey, whether they are saying, okay, this isn't going away in the very immediate future, so we need to now start looking, and maybe they're a step behind. There's some that started that process, a little ways back, and are well going down that path. And I think some of those are seeing many of the benefits that you just mentioned already. For example, I was having a conversation maybe a week ago with a contact center who is mostly interested in just bringing all of the different channels that their customers interact with them on into a seamless platform, because up until this point they had a number of different types of technology for all of the different ways that they engage with customers. And because now their employees, they want to make sure they're being most efficient and being leveraged in the best way while they're remote, they are most interested now in making that a seamless process. So interesting conversation we had there. I think that's come up a lot. And then the other piece that I'm hearing is not only is it about the technology, but how they're going to be able to get the information they need. Now, of course, that goes right into leveraging technology for that. But if people are sitting remotely, they don't have somebody beside them to ask a question to, and they've got to make sure that each of those people, while they're in their siloed locations, have that information at their fingertips to be used at the right time in the right way, and that it's up to date and accurate at all times. So going back to the prediction on whether this works long term, I think a lot of it will depend on the ability to implement technologies that will help with efficiency as well as accurate information, and be able to, and how effective that can be.
Yeah, that's great. There's a couple things I think, the couple things you mentioned I really like. One is, it's not even a shift just in your employees working remotely, but also a shift in your customers' behavior. So how do we, not only thinking about this from the lens of employees are now remote, but also now customers are engaging in brand new ways, and how do we support our teams to help those customers service them on where they want to engage? And then the second thing I really love is, and I feel this even in our day-to-day, it used to be, Erica, you'd walk by my desk and we'd have a quick chat about whatever topic, or I'd kind of, Chris was trying to be busy doing work and I'd be bothering him about something. But now that no longer is the case. It's now we're all virtual. So how do we have those still access to information that was really readily available when we were all kind of elbow to elbow, now in this remote world? And so I think that's a really good point. It's not just about the kind of traditional capabilities of answering a phone call or a chat, but also how are we getting better access to information in a place where we can't be shoulder to shoulder working together. So that's great. I think, so it seems like we're seeing that as a positive trend. Maybe not everybody's going to be permanent tomorrow, but that it's certainly something that companies are looking at investing in. I want to transition now to you, Chris. Another prediction we had was really focusing on the importance of concierge-like service will be in hot demand, in that there's macroeconomic trends, there's now this shift to digital. So how are we delivering a better, more high-touch experience, but doing it in a digital world? And the example people talk about is like a Warby Parker in this direct-to-consumer world, but how does everybody do that at scale? So what are we seeing there? Are we seeing this as something that's really taking off in high-touch, high level of engagement, even in the digital world?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of companies. So the first thing I'll say, I think a lot of people took a while to try and really push to innovate after the first month or so, just trying to, course correct on some things, stabilize some potential gaps and problems with remote teams, supply chain issues, et cetera. I don't think the concierge approach has taken off as much pervasively as, when we were kind of talking about these predictions a few months back. That being said, I think the companies that are innovating are trying a lot of interesting and new stuff. We've had a lot of conversations with customers that are turning to video, for example, for replicating in-store experiences, doing video chats, doing one-way shares or two-way shares of video cameras, using co-browse technology and things like that. The question is the staying power of this and the appetite of the consumer, I think, is really what it's going to come down to, because a lot of companies are trying it in different ways. And as Erica was alluding to, there's different struggles with having remote workforces, and sometimes this technology, the way you're seeing it work right now, is not going to be the same if teams now work back to a centralized call center or things like that, or consumers can start going into stores, retail locations. I think once pandemics starts to calm down in 6 to 8 months, and we'll see the time frame, will this appetite for video chat or not going into brick and mortar locations remain, or will people just want to get out and actually go to these places and have these social interactions? So I would generally say from what we're hearing from companies that have always been innovative, they're definitely trying these things and trying to push the envelope. Some are seeing success, some I think the jury's still out on. I think it's too early to see whether they're going to really stay around. I don't think a lot of that kind of direct to consumer has done as much at Warby Parker, for example, because of supply chain issues in general, delays with shipping and stuff like that. So companies are pushing more towards virtual trying things on or stuff like that. So for example, my eye doctor actually started promoting this kind of virtual kind of eyeglass try on. So they come on, they take pictures of your faces, they digitally overlay things, and then they'll send out a few things, but it's not as quick or seamless as kind of that Warby Parker type experience. So that's an interesting approach to kind of a concierge service, but I don't think it's taking off as much. But we'll see which of these things have staying power. I mean, it would be interesting if the video chat stuff does hang around. I'm still kind of on the fence on it. To see where it stands, but I think some more of the hands-on technologies, as physical locations maybe don't reopen, where you have to replicate kind of a digital, an in-store experience in a digital environment, so whether that's with better proactive engagement with consumers or personalizations and stuff like that, I think we'll continue to gain traction. So,
yeah, I think it's interesting what you've said. So a couple of things that resonate with me is, one, I certainly feel video fatigue. While I love seeing all of your faces, doing it all day, every day does feel a little exhausting over time. So the question becomes, how are consumers going to feel about that? And one, do they want to be seen, or do they want to see the agent, or do they want to see the person in the store? So like, what's the winning use case for these higher touch use cases? Mm-hmm. And then two, will companies see the ROI? I think certainly companies want to differentiate, but the question becomes, is that, reducing customer friction? Is it, ease of supply chain? Like where they want to put their time and energy? And video is nice, but it's even more expensive than phone, and phone is already expensive as a channel of engagement. So the question becomes, are you going to see the ROI, or are there better things to spend your time on? And this kind of transitions us to our next topic, which is that self-service will save customer service. That, in this new world where there's massive fluctuations in volume, I mean, look what happened to the travel and hospitality industry. You look at these channel shifting, where consumers now are engaging on new channels that maybe you weren't armed to support in the same way you did with your physical store. So that, the key kind of saving grace for all companies, how to fortify their front, is with self-service. And so, it's obviously a very different option than doing high level concierge touch. So Akhil, I'm wondering what your perspective is on that, and what you're seeing with companies we're working with and companies you're talking to about how they're looking at self-service.
Yeah, absolutely. So I strongly believe that this is a trend that's going to continue to prevail. And, if you think about self-service, we know without a doubt that, the deployment of self-service has already benefited and saved, hundreds of customer service organizations that we worked with really precious capacity pre-COVID, and, have had, proven demonstrable return on investment. During COVID, during the pandemic, what we saw was this perfect storm, as you mentioned, of firstly, 2x, 3x the contact volume for some industries. Secondly, a total failure of traditional contact channels to address the needs of customers. And also the company's ability to rely on those traditional channels to scale up to their needs rapidly. And then thirdly, it really put a spotlight on challenges involved in effective remote workforce and how do you manage those teams. So a lot of organizations struggle with that transition to work from home. Now, we've seen firsthand how intelligent self-service has saved organizations that ability to react. And some organizations had invested in self-service earlier on, even before this pandemic. And they were able to, in some cases, double down and provide greater content and identify new topics and content accordingly to support the changing dynamics of their customers' needs. There were newer questions that probably no one had in the past that have now come into the fore, with the pandemic. So there's definitely this ability to quickly react and use content curation and be able to put that on the front lines. And the other aspect of it is also, when you think about self-service, is one part of it is your consumers or your end customers, but how do you also self-serve your employees within your organization? I think that's a really big shift also that has been key for a lot of organizations' ability to react in this situation. How do you make sure that your workforce has all the answers they need to help their customers directly? And that's also another big piece where being able to provide self-service to employees is critical, because otherwise, in an office setting, you would go talk with Erica or Chris or tap someone on the shoulder. That becomes much harder. And how do you do that at scale? So as we look beyond the pandemic, without a doubt, there's longer lasting impacts on, consumers' preferences, as well as, businesses' comfort level with the way they've been using this opportunity to deploy digital channels. And more importantly, when you think of self-service, it's about pushing information closer in the hands of consumers on the channels that they prefer. And, one of the things that we want to see is that the shift has really happened is the need for this to be available 24/7. As an example, a traditional contact center, or I would say most contact centers, used to staff up for, lunchtime and after office peaks, depending on, most industries. Of course, in some cases, if you're an internal desk, it would be different hours. But for a lot of this consumer service desk, there was a very peak period, the lunchtime and the after office hours. But now just think about it, obviously all our own personal lives have disrupted. I'd be lucky if I can get to eat lunch at my scheduled noon time a lot of days. And, it's a common story, work life schedules have been disrupted. So is it really the same peaks that we're seeing these days? A lot of cases, no. And if you think about it, you can't really have perpetual staffing throughout the day, throughout, 24/7 for every organization. Of course, some organizations do have that model. But the only way forward to support this kind of disruption is to have effective self-service to assist customers. So yes, I think self-service will continue to save customer service.
Yeah, that's great.
Hey Ryan, I had one thing I just wanted to chime in, more of a question for Akhil on this one, because it's something that we had shared offline. What would you say some companies that are maybe shying away from it, right? I had shared with you offline a certain big box company that I tried to interact with on a messaging channel, and they said, due to volume, we're moving you to here, call us instead, right? You'd hope that they would say, due to volume, here's some resources, and if you can't get it, chat with us or engage with us. Do you think there's a reason why companies are still trying to shy away from self-service?
I think it's a good example of organizations that did not early on see this as being an important trend and did not invest accordingly. And all that they can really fall back on is the channels that they have supported in the past. So it's a knee-jerk reaction. I bet you at all those organizations, someone is really working hard right now, or a group of people working really hard right now on making that transition happen. And to your earlier question, I think that Chris, you answered. I think there's an opportunity for both, right? So if you look at towards shifting towards more humanization in one case, like the concierge side, the high touch. The way I see it is there is high value and low volume versus low value and high volume. And you'd use a different strategy for both, right? So for something which is repetitive, low value, very transactional, self-service, that's the way to go. High value, low volume, absolutely. Put your best foot forward, maybe get the personalized assistance that people need.
Well, on another side of that too, I've seen where those two can be combined as well, and in a new opportunity with this remote work. So, for example, I've talked to specifically a number of credit unions lately who want to bring those together in a way that says, hey, we want to have that high touch. We want to be able to visually engage like we would if somebody were to walk into a branch to help somebody. But they also see it as an opportunity to, while they're on a digital channel and using that visual engagement, say like a co-browse solution, that they can teach that member to then self-serve the next time. And that's something that they wouldn't have been able to do had it been somebody coming into a physical location. They're going to continue to ask those questions. But because now everybody is on a digital channel, but where we can provide that high touch concierge service through those digital channels, it then enables more self-service going forward. So just an interesting trend that I've seen when it comes to bringing those two together going forward.
Yeah, I think they're all great points. And I think at the end of the day, it's about like thinking about what's best for the consumer, the customer. And I think Akhil, you said it well, of, it's not either or, it's what's the problem the customer's trying to solve and how do we help enable them to solve that problem better, but doing it efficiently and effectively. And that brings us to our last topic. So Courtney, saving the best for last year on, I think this is a big thing companies are trying to get their arms around. So one of our predictions was that there's going to need to be a trade-off between efficiency and resiliency. And, so much of the contact center and customer service is around efficiency. So it's like, cost avoidance, reduction of cost of service, do more with less or do the same with less. But there's also this challenge of resiliency of how are we going to make sure we are delivering a high quality of service, because dollars may be harder to get in the future. If there's a global recession, our consumers are our most valuable thing. So what's your perspective on this kind of trade-off between efficiency and resiliency?
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, so it's been really interesting. And I actually spoke to one of our customers yesterday who had a really interesting perspective, because obviously we're experiencing from LogMeIn remote work as well. And we've had some employee surveys to see, how the company's doing, and they've done something similar with their agents. So this company in particular is all about operational efficiency, and they had a really high chat concurrency. So their average was typically around 5. And whilst they did already have some agents that were used to working remotely, they were able to make that transition relatively easily. But what they found was they were so busy. So when COVID first hit, they actually had an 80% increase in their traffic because their business is purely digital. So they were seeing this huge spike, and all of their agents, they were just absolutely slammed. So all day, every day for weeks, during their 8-hour shifts, they were at their maximum concurrency, and that they really started seeing a strain on their employees. So this meant that people started not showing up for work. Their absence levels increased. They were not able to resolve issues the first time around, and they saw their CSAT drop. So what they did was they actually decreased the concurrency, which for a company so focused on that operational efficiency, that was really a battle between management. But what they saw by doing that was the CSAT increased again. So their average speed to answer, while some customers did have to wait a bit longer, once they were getting served, it was a much better experience. So it really has been this push and pull for them during COVID. So whilst they had that crazy peak, they're now just starting to even out a bit better back to pre-COVID levels. But really hearing about, the toll that takes on agents as well. When you're working from home, you may be working from home with young children, as I know a lot of us are. So that can be really challenging. And whilst they're working from home, also some of our other customers, not for those specific operational reasons, but have also had to reduce their chat concurrency purely just because, they're no longer in that call center environment with massive wide screens, a lot of them. Some of them are working from home on one laptop screen. So having that single pane of glass and, being able to see that history or why the customer is having an issue is really become more important than ever. So I think that's definitely a trend, and it does depend on the industry. Fortunately, a lot of our customers, and as Akhil alluded to earlier, for those that have had digital self-service in place, they're really seeing the benefits to that, and not only using that, to help serve customers better, but also, we've seen a customer use digital self-service to help enable their own agents and those new agents that they've even hired during COVID times. So some of our customers, their call centers are growing. They need people to support these digital channels and these self-service channels more than ever. So we're also seeing a lot of that, and self-service can help ramp those agents as well.
One of the things I was thinking about as you were talking, Courtney, it's almost maps back to what Erica was saying as well, and I'd be interested to know if either of you have heard this or seen it. I'd wonder if with a more remote team and that you're not relying on outsourcers, right, you have the ability to expand your hours more easily, because if people can work from home, right, you can now, instead of having everyone in a call center from 8 to 7 or 8 to 6, you can make it a much wider range. Have you guys seen that at all? And with remote, like, you can hire outside of your time zone and still have them be part of your company. Have you seen any signs on that or thoughts around it?
So one thing in particular on that, Chris, I'm glad you brought that up, is because some companies they've actually seen the ability to recruit remote people outside of that traditional contact center as a benefit. So they say they're actually recruiting better people because it's widening the net. One customer, for example, they're based in the north of England. It's a bit remote. It's not a massive city. So if you don't live near that call center, or if that's a difficult commute, that's a smaller net of people that you have the ability to hire. So you can recruit better people. And then in terms of the shift work, they're actually struggling a little bit because they've had to hire more agents, and they are 24/7 support, but those 9 to 5 shifts, those used to be hard shifts to get in the past. But now, because they need more agents to cover those slots, those agents are now getting those 9 to 5 slots, so leaving them a bit more vulnerable on weekends or evenings.
Yeah, I think it is interesting, just overall the variety of changes, and to me it's like other big monumental shifts of when mobile became of age, and people were like, well, what do I do? How do I support a mobile app versus my website? Or when websites came around, there's these kind of tectonic shifts, and it changes the way we should think about our organizations, our prioritization, and also I think what's most importantly, according to you touched on, I think you all touched on, is the importance of our employees themselves. They're dealing with a very hard time, and how are we empowering them and enabling them and giving them what they need to be successful, but also giving them the freedom to do work in a new way. So investing in things like self-service, so they're not feeling perpetually hampered by having to do 5 chats at once. Even though it's good for the organization, it may not be good for our employee, which in turn will not be good for our customer. So I think you've all really brought some really great insights and perspective to these predictions. I'll be interested in revisiting them in a few months, maybe with all 4 of you. But I want to thank you for your frontline perspective. I want to thank you for the time. And as always, I think you bring a unique perspective on what's going on with our customers and with the broader customer experience world. So thank you all so much for joining. Great to have you here. And so I'd also like to thank all of you out there for joining this week's episode of CXNext Live. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Hope you took a couple of insights for yourself on how the new normal has adapted and what's sticking, what's not about the way we work now in a remote world, and also on consumers engaging across new channels of engagement. Thanks so much. Please check back again next week. We have a lot of exciting topics coming up with real-world practitioners and to help you build your second half strategy. Feel free once again to post comments, ask questions. We're really here to help all of you out there in your customer experience journey. So thanks again for joining. Please take care, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.